Hello everybody, I'm here today to talk about the costs and risks of hiring the wrong person or making a poor hiring decision and how to mitigate some of those risks. So the exercise of recruitment is very expensive anyway, even when you hire the right person. If you hire the wrong person or hire a person who's not quite right for a role, you can incur anything up to $53,000 to $240,000 in costs to rehire for that position. Some of the, I guess, unrelated financial costs of this can be an impact on team morale and team stress. So if the person you've hired isn't really working, a lot of that work then falls onto the team to try and complete whilst you deal with that situation. There's also time out for managers interviewing for a rehire, time out in training for team lead supervisors and other staff. And there's also other, I guess, hidden costs around onboarding people through IT systems and various other, corporate functions that need to be addressed every time you hire a person. So I guess there's a few ways you can mitigate some of these risks, and they're pretty simple things that hiring managers and teams can do to ensure that you hire the right person first time every time and hopefully don't go through the process of having to rehire. So one of the first things is trust your gut. And whilst that sounds a bit counterintuitive, if you use your own, gut assessment of people when you meet them and the interactions you're having with them to potentially, sound out any red flags that you may see during interview, you can use that in combination with modern recruitment process and technology, methodology, in order to make sure you're making a very rounded decision. So something that's not necessarily just based on the technical capabilities of that person or just the cultural or personality fit. You get a good mix of, your own assessment and some of the hard and fast metrics around, recruitment process that you may be using. And of course, you need to make sure that those processes and metrics are robust and in place as well. One of the other things you should probably do is look at due diligence in terms of background checking and reference checking. Firstly, the references that are supplied need to be people that can really comment and speak to that person's capabilities and their experience, their cultural fit in the business that they were in previously, and also the type of person they are and how they interact with teams. So people like managers, senior peers who they had some interaction with, or potentially customers in other organisations can usually provide that information. It's also good to do your due diligence on the referees that are provided. Make sure they actually are the people that they say they are, and the person is who the candidate says they are also. I guess the other thing too is use, we sort of touched on this, is use a robust and, focused interview process. You don't necessarily want to be interviewing, specifically around sort of cliched interview questions, where do you see yourself in 5 years and tell me about a time when. Those sort of questions have their place, but really you need to be identifying that person's, specific successes, experiences, and how they've contributed in the past to the organisations that they've worked for. From that information, you should be able to build a pretty good success profile as to how that person is going to perform internally in your roles. Beyond that, and probably key to this, is once the person's on board, make sure that you provide clear, defined goals, KPIs, and any other performance measures for that person up front. Essentially, that gives you the opportunity to set a benchmark for performance, and the person understands what is required from them, and they can also push their capabilities towards that. But importantly, it gives you as a manager or a hiring manager the ability to assess that person on those benchmarks should the person not be working out. It's a point from which you can then have a clear conversation around what's acceptable and what's not, and maybe a pragmatic discussion about the future of that person within the business. If you use these particular tips, you can mitigate poor hiring processes, and hopefully you won't have to go through the pain of rehiring. Thanks very much.